I was doom scrolling the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know how it is, one of those deep internet holes, and I saw it again. It's arguably the most famous quote that sits right at that intersection of, science and spirituality. You've probably seen it.
Let me guess. It's plastered over a picture of a nebula.
Always a nebula or a galaxy. And it's always attributed to Albert Einstein.
Right, the one that goes something like, the religion of the future will be a cosmic religion.
That's the one. And it ends with, if there is any religion that could cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism.
It is such a compelling piece of marketing, isn't it? I mean, the father of relativity,
Right.
the guy who basically rewrote the universe, giving this posthumous thumbs up to the Buddha.
Exactly. It suggests that if you're smart, if you love science, but you also want some kind of, spiritual depth, this is the one for you.
It's the safe bet, the rational choice.
But, and I hate to be this person, we are kind of here to ruin everyone's future tattoo designs today, aren't we?
We are.
Because when we actually dug into the stack of research for this deep dive, that quote, it fell apart pretty quickly.
It did. It breaks my heart a little to say it, but it appears to be apocryphal. Einstein almost certainly never said those exact words.
Like a paraphrase of a paraphrase.
Polished over 50 years to sound just like him.
But here's the thing, and this is why I want to start here. The fact that the quote is fake is actually more interesting to me than if it were real.
How so?
Because it forces us to ask, why do we want it to be true so badly? Why are we so desperate for the guy in the lab coat to validate the person in the robe?
That is the real question. It speaks to this modern anxiety we have. We don't want to feel like we're believing in, nonsense.
You want our spirituality to be peer-reviewed.
Exactly.
So that is our mission today. We're looking at a stack of pretty heavy research. We've got papers on quantum mechanics and emptiness by Michelle Bitbol, historical critiques by Donald S. Lopez Jr., transcripts from the Mind and Life Institute. We're going to unpack this relationship.
We're investigating the concept of the scientific Buddha. Did the Buddha actually anticipate quantum physics 2,500 years ago, or did we just strip mine the tradition to find the bits that sounded like science and, throw away the rest?
So let's start with the physics, because that's the romance phase of this whole relationship. It's where everyone gets excited.
Right.
Because even if Einstein didn't say that specific quote, our notes show he wasn't exactly silent on the nature of reality. He had some pretty spiritual-sounding ideas.
He did. And honestly, what he actually wrote is arguably more profound than the fake quote. He famously wrote about what he called the optical delusion of consciousness.
Optical delusion. That is such a strong phrase for a physicist. It sounds like something out of The Matrix.
It really does. He was describing that feeling that I am a separate thing, distinct from the rest of the universe.
This feeling of being a me inside a bag of skin looking out at the world.
Exactly. He called that feeling a delusion, a kind of prison. And he argued our task is to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion.
Which, to be fair, sounds almost indistinguishable from the core Buddhist concept of anatta.
Non-self.
Non-self, yeah.
It's incredibly close. I mean, the Buddhist argument is that the ego isn't a solid thing. It's a process, a flow. And here's Einstein coming at it from physics, saying that defining yourself as separate from the space-time continuum is an error in perception. You aren't in the universe. You are of it.
Okay, so there is a legitimate shared intuition there. But we have to go deeper than just vibes. We have this fascinating paper in our stack by Michelle Bitbol.
Yes.
2 aspects of sunyata in quantum physics. Now, usually when people mix quantum mechanics and spirituality, my alarm bells start ringing. It gets very woo-woo very fast.
Right, the quantum healing crowd. But Bitbol is different. He's a rigorous philosopher of science. He isn't saying Buddhism is quantum physics.
What's he saying then?
He's saying they share a structural similarity in how they view objects. He focuses on this concept of sunyata.
Which translates to emptiness. And we need to unpack that because in English, emptiness sounds, well, depressing.
It sounds like a void, right? It's a terrible translation in some ways. In Buddhism, emptiness doesn't mean nothing exists.
So the chair I'm sitting on is real.
The chair is real. It means nothing possesses an intrinsic nature. Nothing exists in itself, independent of everything else.
Okay, help me visualize this. Because this microphone in front of me, it feels like it has an intrinsic nature. It's heavy, it's black, it's metal. It's here whether I look at it or not.
And classical physics, Newtonian physics, would agree with you completely. Bowling ball has a position and a weight that belong to it. But Bitbol points out that in quantum mechanics, that assumption just breaks down completely.
Because of the measurement problem.
Exactly. When you get down to the subatomic level, an electron, for example, it doesn't have a defined position or speed until it interacts with a measurement system.
So its properties are relational?
Purely relational. You can't say the electron has property X. You can only say the electron displays property X when interacting with observer Y.
So there is no thing in itself. There's only the interaction.
Precisely. The particle is empty of intrinsic existence. And that is the mirror image of the Buddhist concept of pratityasamutpada.
That is a mouthful.
It is, but it's the core of the philosophy. It means dependent origination.
Dependent origination.
The idea that a flower isn't a thing. A flower is made entirely of non-flower elements. Soil, rain, sunshine, the gardener. You remove those relations, the object vanishes. There's no flower essence left over.
And Bitball is arguing that matter itself works this way at a fundamental level. Reality isn't a bag of separate marbles, it's a network of relations.
And this brings us to entanglement.
Spooky action at a distance.
The thing that freaked Einstein out so much. Quantum non-separability. If two particles are entangled, you can't describe one without the other, even if they're on opposite sides of the galaxy.
You measure one, the other responds instantly.
They aren't two things sending a signal. They are one system.
Which sounds a lot like that Buddhist rejection of separation. But I want to push back a bit here because there's a danger, isn't there? I saw this in our notes on dark energy. It's a darker analogy, but I found it really sticky.
Oh, the dark energy analogy.
Yeah.
This is where the synthesis gets a bit more, maybe, realistic.
So the source material draws a parallel between the physical expansion of the universe and, well, the psychological state of samsara.
Right. So physically, we know the universe is expanding. And it's not just drifting. It's accelerating. It's running away from itself, driven by this mysterious force we call dark energy.
Which makes up, what, 70% of the universe?
It's about that, yeah. It's
Yeah.
tearing the universe apart very slowly. And psychologically, the Buddhist view is that our minds are doing the exact same thing.
How so?
We're driven by what they call defilements, craving, and aversion. These forces act like dark energy. They push us to constantly expand our desires, run away from the present, seek the next dopamine hit.
So samsara, that cycle of dissatisfaction, is basically a high entropy state. We're running away from peace.
That's a good way to put it. Look at the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy. Things fall apart. Disorder increases. You break a glass. It doesn't just reassemble itself.
And we spend our whole lives fighting that. We try to freeze our youth, freeze our relationships, keep everything in perfect order.
We build walls against entropy. And Buddhism says, that is the cause of your suffering. That fight against entropy is the refusal to accept anicca.
Impermanence.
Impermanence. So, in a way, the physics of entropy validates the first noble truth. Suffering exists because we resist the fundamental laws of the universe.
Okay, so listening to all this, the optical delusion, the emptiness of particles, the entropy of suffering, it feels like a slam dunk. The physics matches the metaphysics. The romance is alive. Case closed. Why did you say earlier that there's a trap here?
Because we're ignoring history. We're looking at this connection from the comfort of the 21st century thinking, wow, what a coincidence. But if you read the work of Donald S. Lopez Jr., specifically the scientific Buddha, he argues this compatibility wasn't an accident. It was, in many ways, a deliberate design.
A design? You mean someone engineered Buddhism to look like a science textbook?
Well, we have to go back to the Victorian era, the late 1800s. European colonial powers are moving into Asia, Sri Lanka, Burma, China. And they didn't just bring guns, they brought Christian missionaries.
Who, I'm guessing, weren't there to exchange meditation tips?
Not at all. They attacked Buddhism aggressively.
Yeah.
They called it idolatry, primitive superstition, nihilism. They pointed to their steam engines and telegraphs and said, look, our science proves our cultural superiority. Your religion is just myths and ghosts.
That's a massive existential threat. If you're a Buddhist leader in 1890, you're watching your culture get erased.
Exactly. It was a survival situation. So performers like Anagarika Dharmapala in Sri Lanka and Taixu in China, they had to make a choice. To survive, they had to rebrand.
How did they do that?
They flipped the script. They argued that Buddhism was actually more scientific than Christianity.
That's a brilliant pivot. Oh, you think we're primitive? Actually, we're the rational ones. You're the ones believing in miracles.
Precisely. They said, the Buddha didn't ask for faith, he asked for investigation. But to make that argument stick, they had to do some heavy editing. They stripped away the local spirits, the rituals, the incense, the chanting, anything that looked too much like religion.
They sanitized it.
Lopez calls it bleaching. They created a scientific Buddha, a rational, logical figure who'd be comfortable in a particle accelerator. But Lopez argues this is a modern invention we created to fight a 19th century colonial battle.
And the cost of that is what?
Oh,
Because a rational, non-superstitious philosophy sounds pretty good to me.
the cost is that we lose the richness of the tradition. When you strip away all the religious stuff to make it fit into a science classroom, you turn a profound cosmology into a stress reduction technique.
It becomes a life hack, like mindfulness.
Right. It becomes something you do to be more productive at work, not something that questions the nature of work itself. And this brings us to the most critical distinction in our notes, the difference between descriptive and prescriptive.
This is the category error you mentioned.
Yes, science is descriptive.
Hmm.
Its job is to map the territory. It tells you how atoms bond, how gravity pulls, how the brain fires. It doesn't care if you're happy or moral. It just describes what
Whereas Buddhism
is prescriptive. It's a medical intervention. The Buddha said, I teach one thing, suffering and the end of suffering. He wasn't trying to map the cosmos for fun. He was trying to cure a disease.
So using quantum mechanics to validate Buddhism is like using a microscope to validate a poem. They're just doing fundamentally different things.
Exactly. And there's a real risk. If you tie your ethics to scientific theories, what happens when the science changes? And science changes all the time. If string theory is disproven tomorrow, does that mean the Four Noble Truths are wrong? Do you stop being compassionate because the math changed?
That is a really fragile foundation for a worldview. But we can't ignore that there is a real collaboration happening now. Let's talk about the Mind and Life Institute.
This is where the story gets more nuanced. Starting in 1987, the Dalai Lama began sitting down with top-tier scientists like Francisco Varela. And this wasn't just a photo op.
They were really digging into the methodology, and they found that famous common ground, neuroplasticity.
That was the big win. For decades, Western neuroscience believed the adult brain was fixed. But Buddhist monks insisted that through training the mind, you could physically change the brain.
And when they put the monks in the fMRI scanners?
The monks were right. The gamma wave synchrony in long-term meditators was, it was off the charts. It proved mental training changes physical structure.
So isn't that the validation we are looking for? Science proves meditation works.
It proves it does something. But Evan Thompson, who is a key part of these dialogues, warns us about a new trap. He calls it neural Buddhism.
Neural Buddhism. Is that the idea that enlightenment is just a specific brain state we can find?
It's the reductionist trap. It's the belief that if we can just find the enlightenment spot in the prefrontal cortex, or the right gamma wave frequency, we've explained Buddhism.
Or worse, that we can just zap that spot and induce enlightenment without doing the work. I can see why that's tempting, though. If we can see it on a screen, it feels real.
But the problem is, enlightenment isn't just a neurological fireworks display. It's an ethical and social stance.
What do you mean?
Well, you could put a sociopath in a scanner, and they might achieve a state of high focus or calm. Their gamma waves might look great, but that doesn't make them a bodhisattva.
Because they lack the compassion component, the relation to others.
Exactly. You can't see compassion purely as a firing pattern, because compassion is about how you treat your neighbor. You can't reduce the mind entirely to the brain.
Speaking of reducing things, we have to talk about the other extreme in our notes before we move on. Quantum mysticism.
Ah, yes. The stuff that drives physicists crazy.
The pop culture version. The universe is entangled, so I can manifest a parking spot.
We've all been there.
We have. But our sources are very clear. This is bad math and bad spirituality. Quantum rules apply to subatomic particles. When you get to the macro level cars, people, parking lots, those effects wash out.
Decoherence.
Right. So I'm not entangled with the parking meter.
You are not. And using a term like the uncertainty principle to explain why you're indecisive is, well, it's a category error. It's using scientific jargon to dress up magical thinking.
So where does this leave us? We've debunked the romantic view. We've seen the historical view that the scientific Buddha was a survival strategy. And we've seen the neurotrap of reducing wisdom to brainwaves. Should we just keep them separate?
I don't think we have to break them up, but we need a more mature relationship. The consensus in our sources, from people like B. Alan Wallace, suggests a middle way.
What does a middle way look like for science and religion?
It starts with humility, acknowledging that Buddhism doesn't need science to validate it. The Buddha didn't need a peer-reviewed paper to know that hatred causes suffering. He knew it through direct experience.
But science might need Buddhism.
That's the argument. Science is incredibly good at studying objects. It's terrible at studying the subject. The hard problem of consciousness, why red looks like red, is a huge blind spot for science.
And Buddhism offers 2,500 years of rigorous first-person data on how the mind works from the inside.
So a true science of consciousness needs both. The third-person data from the fMRI and the first-person data from the meditation cushion. You triangulate the truth.
And there are practical applications where this is urgent. We have notes here about artificial intelligence.
This is the modern frontier, right? We're rushing to build intelligent machines, creating minds that are faster than ours.
And the Dalai Lama has been very vocal about this. He points out that intelligence is neutral. You can use it to cure cancer, or you can use it to build a better weapon.
Intelligence without compassion is dangerous.
So as we build these superminds, we're missing the ethical framework.
We're building gods without wisdom. Buddhism offers a system of universal responsibility, the logical understanding that my well-being is tied to yours. If AI lacks that moral compass, we're in serious trouble.
It's ironic that the oldest ideas might be the safety net for the newest technology.
It connects back to the physics, too. David Bohm, one of the great physicists of the 20th century, had these extensive dialogues with the Dalai Lama. He talked about the implicate order.
That sounds like a sci-fi movie title.
It's a beautiful concept. He believed that beneath the fragmented surface of reality, the separate chairs and tables, there is a deeper, unfolded wholeness. He thought that what we see as particles are just ripples on a much deeper ocean.
Which aligns almost perfectly with the Buddhist image of Indra's net.
Indra's net, yeah.
Oh.
The metaphor of an infinite net of jewels, where every jewel reflects every other jewel. The part contains the whole. Bohm saw this in the math of quantum mechanics. The Buddhists saw it in meditation.
So the synthesis isn't about proving one is right. It's about seeing the wholeness.
Exactly. Science gives us the mechanics of the universe. Buddhism gives us the mechanics of living within it. They are different tools for different jobs, but they point toward the same underlying unity.
So to wrap this up, we've traveled from 19th century colonial defenses to MRI machines and quantum labs. What's the big takeaway for you?
I think the takeaway is we need to stop looking for a scientific Buddha who predicts the mass of the Higgs boson. It's disrespectful to the tradition, and it misunderstands science.
We need to let them be what they are.
But we also need to see that the core insight, whether you get there through a telescope or a meditation cushion, is the same. The separation between you and the world is the illusion.
That's the optical delusion Einstein talked about.
That's the emptiness Bitbull describes. That's the dependent origination of the Buddha.
It's funny, we started looking for a connection that would explain the stars to us.
And instead, we found that the real value isn't predicting the stars. It's challenging the astronomer.
Right. If science explains how the universe works, and Buddhism explains how to live in it, maybe we're trying too hard to merge them.
Perhaps the ultimate scientific Buddha isn't one who predicts quantum mechanics, but one who challenges the scientist to turn the lens around and look at the one variable they always ignore: themselves.
And that is a variable we will leave you to observe on your own. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It's been a pleasure.